So be it, Jedi. He's no good to me dead.
You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
You know what's going on?
Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of Star Wars After Hours, this Friday edition. We are joined by Mr. Joshua Taylor. Josh, what's going on, buddy?
Not too much. Excited to be back on the show.
Yeah, excited to have you back, man. Thanks for joining us. I am Stefan Spolino.
I'm Josh Combs.
And today we are talking about Akira Kurosawa, his samurai films, the samurai genre, and how it relates to Star Wars.
Right. But first, what I wanted to do is ask Josh to talk really quickly about his new podcast series, The World That Never Was.
Yeah, buddy. Plug yourself.
I want to hear a little bit of that.
Sure, man. Well, Josh was able to be on the first episode of season 2. The show came out last year in September, and so people really loved it. It was a 6-part series, and so I'm doing another 6 episodes. The first episode just dropped for season 2, but the show's mainly about the things that Disney had planned for its theme park division and never built, and my emphasis is more on the why. So in each episode, we'll be talking a lot about like business stuff, as well as politics and social issues and people who died. And I interview a lot of people for the show, and they typically don't tend to be Disney people or podcasters or YouTube people or anything. Like, obviously, Josh was on the show, and he's a podcaster, but he was one of 4 people, and he was the only one that was kind of a person that fit into that genre. I talked to a lot of people for the episode we did, which was about the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. I talked to somebody who worked at both Disney and Universal. I talked to a friend of mine who's an interior designer about business and about like dealing with clients and why that deal in general didn't fit Disney but fit Universal more. And also how the Wizarding World of Harry Potter is kind of opening up this new door to the next gen of the theme park industry.
Awesome. And you can find this on, it's all under the Network 1901, right?
Yeah, so it's the easiest way to find all the episodes, all of season 1, and then jump into season 2 is to go to network1901.com. And every different podcast series we have has a little banner on the front page, and you can just click on the World That Never Was banner and jump right in.
Awesome, man.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.
All right. So to kind of introduce this, I wanted to play a quick clip of George Lucas himself talking about his inspirations.
I grew up in a small town, Central California, and the movie theaters there didn't show, much beyond Bridge on the River Kwai and The Blob. So I didn't really experience foreign films until I found my way into film school. And at that point is when I was actually exposed to Kurosawa. And a friend of mine, John Milius, actually was a huge fan of Kurosawa's. And so whenever the film was showing, he'd say, "Oh, you got to come and see this. You got to come and see this." And after the first one, the first one I saw was Seven Samurai, and after that I was completely hooked. I said, this is really good. It's hard to really appreciate the true genius of Kurosawa, I think, until you've seen a few of the films, and then you've been able to see other films at the same time and be able to realize his visual style. My favorite of all time is really Seven Samurai. Then maybe Yojimbo, and then Akira, and maybe Hidden Fortress at that. So it's not at the very top of my list, but I was impressed and I liked it. And it's really his visual style to me that is so strong and unique. And again, a very, very powerful element in how he tells his stories. I think he comes from a generation of filmmakers that were still influenced by silent films, which is something that I've been very interested in, having come out of film school. That the visual graphics and the framing and just the quality of the images goes a long way to telling the story and setting the mood, and you're not going to find really a lot of filmmakers that have the facile quality with the medium that Kurosawa had.
So I just want to talk out and start out with just introducing Akira Kurosawa. He is probably the most influential Japanese filmmaker of all time, and he's actually one of the most influential filmmakers of all time, both in Western and Eastern film. So he was born in 1910, died in 1998, and he actually started as a painter. So he kind of had, he liked painting, he liked photography, and he was kind of into that before he actually got into film. So you can see that his visual style is set up and it's composited like a painting. So all of his shots were like moving paintings. So that's one thing that I think leads to that look of Kurosawa's films. How it's kind of put together. But this isn't going to be an episode about actual life of Kurosawa, but just about like the influence on the making of Star Wars. And we'll actually have another episode sometime that we'll actually go into more on Akira Kurosawa himself. So I think that we should start out with talking about one of my favorite Kurosawa movies.
Well, let's actually start out with
what are we going to start out with?
Yeah. Before we get into the main film, I just wanted to gauge your general feelings about the films. So for me, like the main takeaway that I felt like that I got from them was they're fun. First of all, they're well directed. They're simplistic, and they tell a really good story, both through action and dialogue, and it moves along briskly. But a lot of the scenes they're simple, but they're meaningful, and the dialogue is like very direct and kind of like a Japanese way, just how things are communicated. And it's fun in a way that you use the word campy to describe like 80s romps and like weird horror films, but
yeah,
the action is like campy. It's fun. It's fun and a little goofy sometimes. And I see a lot of that in the original trilogy. Just the campy, like simplistic style that's fun.
Definitely.
So, what about you guys? What did you guys think through watching these?
Well, I think that we see a lot of it's the same thing. It's got a little bit of humor mixed in with this huge kind of it's a simple story, but it builds this whole environment that you can kind of pull from, and it's like you can even create stories within those environments. So I can see where that, just that one thing as far as theme is similar to Star Wars.
Thematically simple, but the scale is what's the word? Grandiose?
Yeah.
How do you say that?
Grandiose.
Grandiose.
Yeah. I think what's really cool about Kurosawa that people probably don't notice right off the bat, like I think the easiest thing to, connect to the two styles is how George Lucas treats Jedis like samurais, with the two-handed lightsaber and kind of the mentality of this religion. But to me, the thing that really stands out with Kurosawa, if you just look at his films and look at how they're made, there's two things that stand out to me that you definitely see in Star Wars. Environment, which again, like you said, he was a painter. And so everything in the shot matters. You know, like the foreground, the background, everything. And then also the edits. Like instead of panning the camera to zoom the camera, you know, with one fluent motion, it's like a choppy cut, which kind of does add to that campiness, but it's such like a startling editing style, you know, of cutting the camera, moving it as a close-up shot or whatever the case may be. It was so different from Hollywood films of the time. Because of that editing style, it allowed for a different pacing.
Yeah, and I think that it's really, it's pretty impressive that Akira Kurosawa did a lot of the writing, directing, and editing himself. So he had that vision from the start, and it really was like building an art piece, building like something himself. He had like co-writers on some things, but it was like he was using, you know, this environment that he built as like a canvas, and then the people as like, you know, the painting. But he was, you know, had his, you know, he had his hand in throughout the whole thing. And I think that's exactly what George Lucas was at a point where he wanted total control of it and have his vision go from start to finish. And you know, I think it worked for the most part in especially in the original trilogy. And he definitely went for it. He definitely did what he wanted to, you know. Yeah. So I think that that's another similarity just between the two people themselves as far as filmmakers.
Yeah, and we keep saying the word environment, and one thing I noticed when I was watching these is he uses the environment a lot, like even in the fighting scenes. He'll use like environmental hazards and little tricks just in the surrounding area. It's like everything in the scene has a purpose that's used for the fight. There's not a windmill there because it's just a windmill. The guy's gonna, you know, use it to dodge and block and all kinds of fun stuff.
And we can like translate that not just to Star Wars and Lucas, but to so many different directors that have taken fight scenes and used the environment within the fight scene. That's kind of become almost like a basic strategy for fight scenes. But Kurosawa was really the one that invented that style.
Yeah, and one thing that I kind of see that's similar to that is actually Pirates of the Caribbean. The Pirates of the Caribbean movies, they have very similar, you know, those are sword fights, obviously, so it is going to be a little bit closer. But the same thing, environmental hazards, cutting down the, you know, the boards up top. We see that in, I think, 3 Outlaw Samurai. So, yeah, and an interesting thing is that the term Jedi Geki is Japanese for period drama. So films like The Hidden Fortress and other aspects of Kurosawa's, they were often called period pieces. And therefore, George Lucas decided to call the people Jedi. From Jedi Geki.
Jedi Geki.
Yeah. So that's one interesting thing. So he borrowed a lot from Japanese films and Japanese mythology, mixed with Western, you know, kind of futurist type weird stuff, you know? Yeah. Whatever he saw at the theater that I think it was called it was the Canyon Cinema is where he first started watching the foreign films like Kurosawa and started seeing some of the older things like that. So that is pretty cool.
You can see a direct correlation between like Kurosawa and like spaghetti westerns as well.
Oh, totally.
Right? So like those two things could have made like an impression on on a young George Lucas to see like cowboy films and Kurosawa. Maybe he grew up on American cowboy films, then went back in time to see Kurosawa films and kind of was like, oh, there's a direct correlation here, and made that. I'm just speculating on that, but like that's something that you could definitely see. The popularity of cowboy films when he was young probably was such an influence, and therefore Kurosawa had to be a direct line to that.
Yeah, definitely. Especially because, one of the movies we are going to talk about, Yojimbo, was actually pretty much ripped off the year later, turned into a spaghetti western called Fistful of Dollars. And it's almost not shot by shot, but it's a western version of Yojimbo, and it was without any permission.
Yeah, Yojimbo is almost it's almost like a gangster film too.
That's something that a lot of like foreign directors see. They see a lot of their ideas. I mean, like you look at Rings, like The Ring was like a perfect example, like that it was a Japanese film before an American film. A lot of Japanese ideas or even European ideas get lifted for American films, and they are not credited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that can definitely be a problem. I think that he didn't go too far with it, but he was advised to make legal actions against them.
It was that close?
It was that close. Like, lines, like, down to, like, just, it's ridiculous. Like, the situations, the whole thing is Yojimbo, but it's called A Fistful of Dollars. So, if that is everything to introduce this subject, we might as well start talking about Yojimbo.
Yeah, so Yojimbo follows a Ronin, which is a samurai without a master. The main actor, Toshiro Mifune. I hope I'm saying that right.
Toshiro Mifune.
Mifune.
He's probably not listening, so...
Yeah, he probably doesn't care.
He's long gone.
He's been in all three of the major films that we're talking about. He plays a Ronin named Sanjuro Kuwabatake, and it's a gangster film almost. It pits these two clans against each other. Very cool film.
Yeah, definitely, and it shows you different shades of humanity, because it is funny. But you see that this guy, he's kind of a wanderer. He's kind of like a shithead. Like for a little bit, he's like, screw, the whole samurai, screw that whole, he's leaving the order or whatever.
Yeah.
He's going off on his own, throwing a stick in the air and saying, wherever it lands, that's the way I go. And like, he just walks to the closest town and he just goes in there and tries to see like who's going to hire him. Cause first of all, Yojimbo translates to the bodyguard. So basically that's what he is that he's hired to be a bodyguard. And, we'll see that in a lot of different, in different samurai films. But this one is really interesting because we see some Western elements into it. Like the pistol.
Yep.
So
by the son of one of the clans, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the clan leaders.
Yeah, it's Anusuke, and he comes back. He comes back from the west with a nice revolver. And so you have Sanjuro going into this town, and he is taking over all the gangsters. He's trying to like play against both sides, and it kind of bites him in the ass after a while, and he gets kind of desperate, and then they realize they don't need him anymore. But I want to break down some parts in this that are visually similar to Star Wars.
Yes.
Number one,
For sure.
the hand getting chopped off. That's like the first thing that I thought
First thing
of.
you notice? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like
Cloud City.
Yeah, he just gets his arm chopped. Well, not just Cloud City.
Well, yeah, there's lots of limb loss in
Yeah.
Star Wars.
Yeah, because that's actually a samurai, the sword style move is because it's better to disarm someone than to kill them.
Literally.
Disarm. So it's like if they have a sword in their arm, you know.
And I think that adds to like the campy value, right? Like,
Yeah.
That's something that we definitely saw from Star Wars, where it's like these straight up clean cuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like a little gruesome, not too gruesome, not where it's like realistic, but it's like you see an arm on the floor.
It's goofy gruesome.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I love the way that he shot that. It was very similar to how the actual cantina scene was shot when Obi-Wan took off what's his name's arm?
Is it Ponda Baba?
Yeah, Ponda Baba. He took off his arm. That was a very similar shot to how that worked, you know, because it showed the action and then it just edited straight to
The arm on the
shot
floor.
at the arm on the floor. And that's definitely beautiful because it's not like, you know, you see so many movies that they slice through someone and you see blood squirting all over the place. And it's like, you know, that's cool, but that's not what matters. What matters is that the arm is off.
Yeah.
You know, that's it. And then he just like sword back in the thing after he kills 2 people, cuts off an arm. He's like 2 coffins, make that 3. Like, that's the funny thing too, because that part exactly is also in Fistful of Dollars.
Mm.
Him asking the coffin maker to make the specific number of coffins.
Sad.
Yeah, it's like just the same. Oh, looks like we lost Josh.
Okay, yeah, so I totally see how, you know, the loss of limbs and that whole fun campiness, how George Lucas pulled from all that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any closing thoughts on Yojimbo, either of you? And after that, let's get into how these films kind of relate to Star Wars. I mean, we've been talking about it, the campiness and the influence of George Lucas. Also, Rian Johnson mentioned how much of an influence these films were on him and what that means for episode 8. So let's get our closing thoughts on Yojimbo and the rest of the other 2 films, and then we'll move into how it relates to Star Wars going forward.
I think that what I think of, and I kind of said it earlier about like weather and environment. In particular with Star Wars, it's like times 100, right? Like every planet is drastically one weather pattern.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
and I think that that's like an nod to Kurosawa, where it's like the styles of like the backgrounds and stuff, like having these huge rock formations or having like these huge hills or whatever the case may be, like speaks to that, you know, and seeing like a character like in the distance and like seeing like C-3PO and R2-D2 in this huge vast like sandy landscape.
Yeah. Definitely.
Like, completely 100% looks like a shot from a Kurosawa film.
Yeah. And the same thing with the with the sunset, the binary sunset on Tatooine. That's very Kurosawa. It's very, very similar. But one thing, that's pretty much all I've got on Yojimbo. I really enjoy that movie, and
Yeah, that was probably my favorite one.
one part I liked, it was the sword throw, the knife throw or whatever.
Yes.
Right into his arm when he's about to shoot him. I thought that was great. It's things like that are fun. Because even if you think about Darth Vader throwing his lightsaber, kind of stupid, like kind of awesome. Then like when you saw it happen, on Cloud City, or not on Cloud City, on the second Death Star.
Right. So as far as like the action sequences, the parts that we love all of Star Wars, but the parts that we really love about Star Wars, the laser sword fighting, the lightsaber fighting, and we're already kind of moving that direction. From the prequels to The Force Awakens, it was a lot more simplistic, and then we got in Rebels the Darth Maul and Obi-Wan fight. I don't know if you saw this, Josh. Did you see that episode?
No,
No. So just a quick thing. So Darth Maul, he has this whole like super eccentric double-bladed lightsaber. He spins it around everywhere. Sorry, my phone's going off. So Darth Maul is like super eccentric, and they get primed for this fight, and they're both on Tatooine, and there's this whole huge build-up. Darth Maul starts spinning his lightsaber around, and with Obi-Wan parries once, and then just slices down the middle, takes him out. So it's this whole build-up, and it's this super samurai, like, no wasted motion, just takes him out.
Mm-hmm.
And so
that's something too, like where we talked about this on the Disney Culture Club too. We talked about the prequels and how like there are little things in the prequels that do make them good that maybe people don't notice, like how Obi-Wan like takes out Darth Maul is the same way that Anakin tries to take out Obi-Wan, like the exact same style and moves,
right?
And like that entire move set is what like basically Anakin, that's how he gets all of his limbs chopped off. And like it is very like 1-2 you're gone, like it doesn't need to be like huge movements or like acrobatic at all. Like it is very much samurai driven, like very little movements to make the most damage.
Exactly. Oh, you'll like this real quick since you haven't seen it. I'm probably ruining it for you, actually.
That's totally fine.
Okay. All right. So one little thing you'll appreciate is, you remember in episode 1 where Darth Maul does the hilt smash and he kills Qui-Gon like that? He kind of hits him in the head with the hilt, stabs him. So Obi-Wan goes into the stance that Qui-Gon uses, right? And so Darth Maul adjusts real quick because he recognizes the stance. And then he goes in for that same hilt smash to like hit Obi-Wan in the head and stab him through the stomach, just like he did to Qui-Gon. And instead of, doing what Qui-Gon did, just brings his lightsaber straight down, straight through the hilt, cuts him, horizontally across the stomach. And that's like poetically how that fight ends.
Yeah, so not only does he slice the lightsaber in half, he slices Darth Maul in half.
Yeah.
And we're talking about vertically now.
Yeah.
This time.
Oh yeah,
vertically.
I said horizontally, huh? It's vertically.
It's vertically. So he's cut a nice plus sign.
Yeah, Darth Maul gets plus sign. He's cut in half.
But yeah, that whole sequence is very samurai. We talked about it a little bit, but it's very similar to like kendo. Came out of kenjutsu, which was the fighting style of the samurai. So kendo is the sport of how, of a sword. It's a sword fighting type thing. But the fight was based on that quite a bit. And same thing. Actually, you know what? I want to talk about the Hidden Fortress really quick and how a lot of people, there's a video that explains it better. That's pretty cool. So I'll link to that about the actual, like side by side similarities between Star Wars and, specifically A New Hope, episode 4, to the Hidden Fortress. And, it starts out with two peasants in the sand. And they're arguing and bickering at each other. And this was George Lucas's, this was C-3PO and R2-D2. That's where he got those two characters from. And it's very interesting. You got a princess who's not weak, you know. She's kind of a
Leia-ish.
Yeah, but even worse, because she's like, oh, I'm not gonna eat or whatever. Like, she's just gonna, like, I don't know. It's kind of ridiculous how she treats the other people until the end. They find gold and sticks and stuff, and they're just all these weird little links that link everyone together. That's very Star Wars. That, like, it's just like, oh, this person came upon this little thing, they saw it, and then they meet this person, and then they're like, oh, okay, these two people have to save the world or save the universe, galaxy, whatever. So I think the Hidden Fortress, there is a lot of thematic similarities and a lot of story similarities, but also just the way it's edited. And another thing with Kurosawa is, like, the screen wipes that we see in, like, all of the transitions in Star Wars are very based on the Kurosawa style,
Right.
which is pretty cool. And so one thing, well, do you guys have anything that you want to talk about that?
As far as Hidden Fortress?
Yeah, as far as Hidden Fortress and kind of the, you know, what you guys thought about that. And, like, how it works with Star Wars.
I mean, nothing in particular.
We lost Josh again.
Sweet. So we have the whole, princess hero dynamic of the Hidden Fortress. And then the last film is Seven Samurai. Now, I'm going to read the description real quick, and I think it will remind you of something. So the storyline is a veteran samurai who has fallen on hard times answers a village's request for protection from bandits. He gathers 6 other samurai to help him, and they teach the townspeople how to defend themselves, and they supply the samurai with 3 small meals a day. The film culminates in a giant battle when 40 bandits attack the village. Now, the key part of that is the veteran samurai gathers 6 other samurai to help him. And what are the Knights of Ren? There's 6 of them, right?
Yeah.
Yep. So we could have a little connection there.
So, I mean, this is, you know, on the other end, obviously in the movie, they are the protagonists.
Yeah.
But, they're not going to redo the movie, but we know that, that J.J. Abrams, and Rian Johnson are pulling out of the same movies that George Lucas used to start out with. And, Seven Samurai has been, like, I think every director has talked about using Seven Samurai as a influence through for Star Wars. So it's really really special because we're gonna see him on the bad side. Maybe we're gonna see the antagonist Seven Samurai, or maybe the Snoke and his 6 Knights of Ren. Maybe it's less like the Knights of the Round Table and more like Seven Samurai.
I think it's entirely possible and likely.
Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with you, and I think when you look at Kurosawa's films, like, especially as you get further down the line, like to his like later stuff, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, stuff like that, you start to see this blurring of like good and bad, and I think that's something that we're going to start to see in these later episodes, in 8 and 9.
Right.
Maybe this blurring of lines of like who's really good or bad, and like what that means. Like the Knights of Ren, like obviously like Kylo Ren has been battling back and forth with the good and bad within him, and that's something that I think will be a constant theme going forward, and that definitely derives from Kurosawa and from like Seven Samurai and stuff too.
Yeah, definitely. Ryan Johnson also mentioned a movie called Three Outlaw Samurai, and it's not directed by Akira Kurosawa, but it's actually by Hideo Gosha. And one interesting thing about Hideo Gosha is that his father was a Yojimbo, and he hails from from that type of family. And as well, Kurosawa actually comes from a samurai family lineage as well. So that's really neat because, he's going back to his actual, his ancestors.
Authentic.
Yeah. And I love Three Outlaw Samurai because it's a little more like humorous. It's like they kind of, it dips between, the same thing with Kurosawa, I guess. It dips between, something really serious, a good, like, straight up storyline where they have to save a town, save everyone from dying. And, I'll go ahead and just read a quick synopsis. Shiba, a wandering ronin, encounters a band of peasants who have kidnapped the daughter of their dictatorial magistrate in hopes of coercing him a reduction in taxes. Shiba takes up their fight, joined by two renegades from the magistrate's guard, Sakura and Kikyo. The three outlaws find themselves in a battle to the death. So, I really liked the fight scenes in this. This is like the best, I think, as far as like, kind of like a little funnier, more humor, not so much as one and done, it's but it is very similar where they have those standoffs, and you have a standoff with I think it was with Shiba and forgot the other guy's name, whatever. Anyways, you have that standoff, and it's just amazing how they're kind of just looking at each other and they're just talking quietly, and then he changes his stance and does a little backhand sword thing, and just slice and then into the guy's back. And these are really interesting fight choreography, especially for those movies at that time. And I think we're going to see that type of fight choreography that's really creative, but at the same time it's meaningful. And that's the one where they cut they cut the wood panel thing in that the water wheel.
Yeah, the water wheel.
Yeah, and they have someone that's decapitated on the water wheel, and it's like there's just fun things like that. But at the very end, you have them kind of like splitting up, and it's kind of tough because one of them wants to go with the woman and go back and make a life with her and save go on and live his life. And the other two want to stay and save the town, even though they don't really have a reason to, because they're just doing it to do the right thing. And so this other character, I forgot which one it was. I think it's Kikyo, that he has the staff with the blade at the end. I don't remember what they're called.
Oh, like the Praetorian Guard.
Yeah,
kind of.
I think it's a naginata is what it's called.
Naginata.
Yeah. And he has a really cool fight style, which I think it's going to be very similar to maybe if Rey still uses the staff at some points and then pulls out the lightsaber when she really needs it, There's that, or Captain Phasma with her new thing or whatever. But just the story-wise, this reminds me of what might happen. You have one that goes away to do his own thing, for his personal reasons. He goes off with the woman and her child, but he realizes that he needs to go back and help the two guys that are going to save the town, even if that means that they're going to, fight to their death. And so I think we might see some type of storyline based on Luke and Rey, kind of out there doing their own thing. And maybe they have to pause what they're doing to go back and save the day. Or maybe that's just Luke himself, and that woman is like the island. And so he needs to be, go through that whole internal battle to go back and actually do the right thing.
Yes.
So I think that is also a cool thing there that Rian Johnson said that he was actually going to use. And there are tons of samurai films. There are tons. Akira Kurosawa, he's ridiculous. He's made a ton of films. Not all of them are samurai films, but there's actually one that we mentioned on the last episode, Kagemusha, that was actually co-produced by George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola, and directed by Akira Kurosawa.
Oh.
So that was an amazing mixture between two people who were influenced by Kurosawa, building something with Kurosawa, and it came out so great. So that's on Netflix. So if anyone wants to watch that, it's Kagemusha. And it's just really cool to see what people can use from the past and put into the future, or actually a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So I guess it's not the future, but we're seeing it. We're seeing it in all of the armor. We're seeing it in all of the weapons, everything that it keeps on building up to this, this obvious Japanese influence, especially in episode 8. If you look at, the costuming, artwork, all that stuff, it's, I think it's going to be good.
Quite good, yes.
Yeah. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think so. I think that episode 8 might even bring back to the styles of what kind of 4 and 5 are, for sure, where there's, I want to say this just because it didn't get brought up, but the fighting style, I feel like, in earlier Kurosawa films is kind of like clunky, would you say? Like,
mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily, like that original like lightsaber fight between Darth Maul and Obi-Wan in episode 4 is clunky. It's not smooth. It's not like what we ended up seeing in the prequels. And I think that episode 7 kind of leaned a little bit towards that way, and I think in episode 8 we might see maybe a full return to that kind of samurai style of fighting rather than an acrobatic style.
Mm-hmm.
And we may see more of the fast-paced action and more of like the dogfights and stuff like that going on. Just my thoughts. It's my personal opinion, but I think that might be something we move more toward.
Yeah, definitely.
Totally agree. So let's wrap up with I guess in a way predictions on what's going to translate to the future of Star Wars. Like Josh just said, I see a return to a more simplistic samurai-esque fighting style. I think we're going to see some good, we have this whole vibe of, this gray area, but I think a strong hero will emerge from that. We're going to have some confusion, but we're going to have a very clear at the end of it, I feel like, antagonist and protagonist, because all these films, they end up with somebody, choosing a path. They're not left in a gray area. There's a strong direction for the characters and, their connection to either good or evil. Mm-hmm. They start out as the samurais, they start out as like a good Samaritan almost and turn into a savior, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're going to see that, a return to the classic fighting style. And I think the scale is going to get bigger.
Yeah.
I think the stakes are going to be raised.
I think so, but I think like also this kind of goes back to both episode 2 and 5. You know, the middle films in the series. They're each individual series of 3. The focus becomes more on like this internal struggle. You know, versus, and like kind of what Stefan was saying, like, where it's like, you know, Luke, now that he kind of has a direction, now he needs to decide what he wants to do with it. And now that Rey kind of knows the direction she wants to go or is going, and is kind of forced on this journey, how does she deal with it?
Right.
The same with Kylo at this point, and all of the new characters really. How do they deal internally with what they're doing, and then moving into the last episode, at least of this series, we'll see the clear path that they've chosen.
Right.
But this will be the internal struggle. And it'll be interesting to see that internal struggle mixed with these grand, huge battle scenes and whatnot.
Yeah, so what themes, I guess both of you, do you see returning as far as aesthetics?
Well, like I said, I think it's going to be simplistic in the minute details, but big in scale. I think we're going to see.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of like personal connections on a personal level, and like choices being made, but it's going to be big. It's going to be a big, loud movie.
Yeah, you're going to see the big battles. You're going to see, like they had in I don't remember, actually a lot of Kurosawa. They had, they have all the horses, they have all the army, and it's just a huge scale. And back then they used people. So it was like, now we can put in people digitally. So I think that it's not going to be like Clone War or Attack of the Clones, huge. But I think you're correct, like, and that the scale is going to be a lot bigger, but in a more personal level, if that makes sense. I think, yeah,
and I think like what we've already seen from the trailer, right? Like the training on the rocks, like on the island, like just this like huge, beautiful waving camera shot over this like wonderful place where there's not a lot of character, like, but what you do see of the characters, it's like you automatically pick up on what's going on, and like those kinds of shots, mixed in with like those harsh edits, like to the up close shot or whatever of a facial or something, like those kinds of things I'm really looking forward to. I'm looking forward to like experiencing these grandiose shots, these like painting style shots mixed with like character development, like probably nothing that we've seen ever since, in my opinion, at least episode 5. Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah. So cinematography on a grand scale, and development down to the minute.
Yeah, and I mean with Rian Johnson, you see similar things with, with Looper. If you watch Looper, there's like, it's very, everything has a purpose. Every shot has a purpose, I think, and it invokes both emotion and excitement, but I think that he knows how to slow it down just by what's in the frame and how things are put together, so I think that not just for episode 8, but I think in general Rian Johnson is very based on Kurosawa as well. But a really interesting thing that links perfectly with Star Wars and Akira Kurosawa is Toshiro Mifune, who was almost Darth Vader.
Darth Vader.
And also, he was almost Obi-Wan. So, yeah, and he's one of those actors that you could see anything just from one expression. You know, he really puts that expression on his face. And I think that Mark Hamill is, he's very similar, now. Like, if you watch him when he, like, performs, like, voice acting and stuff, you can see his, you know, everything. So he's very expressive, but he knows how to show that feeling. And we can see just in that ending scene of episode 7 that facial expression told us everything. So I think that Mark Hamill now is becoming, you know, that type of actor, that Toshiro Mifune, where you can see where he doesn't have to talk too much. You know, he's direct. He says what's needed to be said. He's not polished, but you know that he's got a little humor to him, but he's got a lot of roughness to him, and he can show both sides without breaking this character barrier. You know what I mean?
Right. So I'm very excited about episode 8. I'm very excited after watching all these films about the influence that Rian Johnson's, you know, taking us forward into. So with that, I think, do we have any closing thoughts, guys? Anything you wanted to say, Josh, that you didn't get a chance to throw in, both Joshes?
I think this is just really a good episode and a good chance for people who don't know about foreign film to really explore foreign film, because you may not realize how influential anything outside Hollywood is to Hollywood, right? Like, we rely so much on Hollywood for film entertainment, but there's so much more to see around the world, and they do influence the films that we end up seeing out of Hollywood in the long run. It is a great way to look at it, and to say that Kurosawa and Star Wars are very similar is totally correct. And there's so many other, you know, episodes. Like, obviously, as a Star Wars podcast, you're not going to focus on something else, but like, there are other similarities in other types of genres. Like we said, the spaghetti westerns totally derive from this. You can make those kinds of efforts into looking at foreign film.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I think that these are all, you know, movies that people should check out. And, you know, these are two directors, specifically Akira Kurosawa and Hideo Gosha. And just to name the films that we've talked about, the Hidden Fortress, Seven Samurai, Yojimbo, and Three Outlaw Samurai. So if anyone listening wants to check those out, definitely look for those. You can find them on, like, I think iTunes, Amazon, all that stuff.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So with that, Mr. Joshua Taylor, thank you for your time. You guys can find him, Dale, and the whole crew over at Network1901 on YouTube and iTunes, everywhere you get your podcasting listening done.
Yeah, and what's the website?
Network1901.com.
Perfect.
Easy.
That's real easy, and I'm sure that has the links to everything and all of the information.
It does.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for your time, buddy. We're gonna talk to you again soon. I hope. We got some other things in the chair here. So
yeah, we got a lot to talk about, and a lot that you know, that we both like. That, you know, we both like Star Wars. We like all these things, so
Totally.
It'll work.
All right. Always a pleasure, buddy. Take care, man.
Take care.
Well, we hope you guys enjoyed our conversation with Josh Taylor from Network 1901. Me and my co-host Josh Combs always enjoy talking to him and everybody from Network 1901. So thanks for listening to this Friday edition of Star Wars After Hours. Make sure to tune in Wednesday for more news, and again on Friday for another fun and interesting topic. Make sure to check out all our giveaways on our website. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Rate and review, and we'll catch you guys later. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, guys. And you can listen to us on the Star Wars HoloNet news show on Wednesday.
Vamos.
So be it. Jedi. He's no good to me dead.
You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
You know what's going on?